Pope John Paul II remains one of the most revered figures in modern history, a spiritual giant whose impact continues to resonate with millions around the world. But beyond his extraordinary life, what stands out most are the final moments that left even the Vatican in stunned silence. It's in these final hours that something truly profound occurred, something that sent shockwaves through those who were privileged to witness it. Imagine the scene. A man who had carried the weight of the Catholic Church for nearly 3 decades, a beacon of hope during turbulent times, now nearing the end of his earthly journey. Yet even in his frail state, he managed to summon the strength to deliver a message so powerful, so unexpected, that it left everyone questioning its deeper meaning. This wasn't just any farewell. It was a moment that transcended time, a statement that would linger in the hearts and minds of millions long after he was gone. The world had watched Pope John Paul II endure immense suffering, but no one could have foreseen what would happen next. His final message wasn't just a reflection of his enduring faith. It was something more, a call to humanity, a prophecy, and perhaps even a warning. What did he see in his final hours? What compelled him to speak the words he did? And why have those who heard it been unable to forget it? These are the questions that make his final moments so compelling, and they're the ones we'll seek to answer. To understand the significance of these final words, it's crucial to explore the man behind them, a man who had faced the trials of war, the shadow of communism, and the challenges of leading a global church through a rapidly changing world. Pope John Paul II was no stranger to hardship. Born Karol Józef Wojtyła in 1920 in Wadowice, Poland, his early life was marked by profound loss, including the deaths of his mother, brother, and father by the time he was just 20 years old. These personal tragedies shaped his resilience and deepened his spiritual devotion, setting the stage for a life of unwavering faith. As a young man, Wojtyła experienced the horrors of Nazi occupation, working in a quarry and secretly studying for the priesthood. His clandestine efforts to serve God during such dangerous times reflected his remarkable courage and conviction. When Poland fell under Soviet control after World War II, he became a vocal advocate for religious freedom, standing up against oppression with the quiet strength that would define his papacy. When Wojtyła was elected pope in 1978, the world witnessed the rise of a leader unlike any other. He was the first non-Italian pope in over 450 years, a fact that symbolized a new era for the Catholic Church. His charisma, intellect, and ability to connect with people of all backgrounds quickly made him a beloved figure. Over the course of his nearly 27-year papacy, he traveled more extensively than any of his predecessors, bringing his message of hope, peace, and human dignity to every corner of the globe. But John Paul II's influence extended far beyond his travels. He played a pivotal role in the fall of communism, particularly in his native Poland, where his unwavering support for the Solidarity movement inspired millions to fight for freedom. His efforts to bridge the gap between faiths, including groundbreaking outreach to the Jewish community, Muslims, and members of other Christian denominations, earned him widespread respect and admiration. At the same time, John Paul II faced criticism and challenges within the Church. He remained steadfast in his traditional views on issues like abortion, contraception, and the role of women in the Church, which sometimes put him at odds with more progressive voices. Yet, even his critics acknowledged his deep spiritual conviction and his unwavering commitment to the teachings of Christ. As we delve deeper into his life, it's important to remember that Pope John Paul II was not just a religious leader, but also a man of extraordinary depth and complexity. He was a poet, a philosopher, and a theologian, whose writings continue to inspire countless believers. His encyclicals, such as Redemptor Hominis and Evangelium Vitae, reflect his profound insights into the human condition and his vision for a world rooted in love and truth. In understanding the context of his life and legacy, we begin to see why his final moments carried such weight. Pope John Paul II was a man who lived every day as though it were a testament to his faith, and his final words were no exception. To fully grasp the power of those words, we must explore the journey that led him to that pivotal moment, the trials, triumphs, and unwavering devotion that defined his life and ministry. As Pope John Paul II's life drew to its close, whispers began to circulate among those closest to him. There were rumors that the Pope, a man who had spent decades guiding the Catholic Church and addressing the spiritual needs of millions, had something significant to share before his passing. For years, he had spoken about the importance of faith, hope, and unity. But what could he possibly reveal now, as he approached the ultimate moment of truth? Those around him sensed that he was preparing to deliver a message of extraordinary importance, one that might reflect his deepest convictions, his greatest fears, or even a divine revelation. Speculation abounded. Was it a prophecy, a warning about the future of humanity, or a call to action for believers everywhere? Pope John Paul II was known for his contemplative nature and his profound connection to prayer. He had often spoken of the end times, emphasizing the need for humanity to remain vigilant and faithful. Could it be that his final words would offer insight into what lay ahead? The anticipation was palpable, not just within the Vatican, but around the world. In his last public appearances, the Pope's frailty was evident, but his spiritual strength remained undiminished. He struggled to speak, his voice often reduced to a whisper, yet his presence was as commanding as ever. Those who attended his final audiences remarked on the intensity of his gaze, as if he were looking beyond the present moment into something far greater. It was during these appearances that some began to believe he was preparing to reveal something extraordinary. For those familiar with Pope John Paul II's teachings, the idea of a final message carried profound significance. Throughout his life, he had often spoken about the mysteries of faith and the eternal struggle between good and evil. He had warned against the dangers of moral relativism, urging believers to stand firm in their convictions. He had also shared his belief in the power of divine mercy, a theme he returned to time and again in his writings and homilies. With these teachings in mind, many wondered whether his final words would echo these themes or take them to a new level. To understand the weight of this moment, it's important to consider the unique role Pope John Paul II played in the modern Catholic Church. He was not merely a caretaker of tradition, but a visionary leader who sought to engage with the contemporary world while remaining rooted in timeless truths. His papacy was marked by a delicate balance between innovation and tradition, dialogue and doctrine. This duality made him a figure of immense complexity, capable of addressing the most pressing issues of the day, while keeping his eyes fixed on eternity. As his health continued to decline, Pope John Paul II spent more time in private prayer and reflection. Those close to him described a man who seemed increasingly detached from the concerns of the world, as if he were preparing for a journey into the next life. Yet, even in this state of quiet contemplation, he remained deeply attuned to the needs of his flock. It was as though he carried the weight of the world's prayers and hopes with him, seeking to offer one final gift to those who had looked to him for guidance. The Pope's life story is a testament to the power of faith and perseverance. Born into a devout Catholic family in Poland, Karol Wojtyła experienced profound loss at a young age, losing his mother, brother, and father before he reached adulthood. These early tragedies shaped his spiritual journey, drawing him closer to God and inspiring his lifelong commitment to serving others. During World War II, Wojtyła witnessed the horrors of Nazi occupation firsthand. He worked in a quarry and later a chemical factory, all while secretly studying for the priesthood. His clandestine efforts to become a priest during such perilous times demonstrate his remarkable courage and determination. When Poland fell under Soviet control after the war, Wojtyła became a vocal advocate for religious freedom, standing up against the oppressive regime with a quiet but unyielding strength. After being ordained as a priest, Wojtyła quickly rose through the ranks of the church, earning a reputation for his intellectual rigor and pastoral sensitivity. As a bishop and later a cardinal, he played a key role in the Second Vatican Council, contributing to the Church's efforts to engage more deeply with the modern world. His election as Pope in 1978 marked a turning point in church history, as he became the first non-Italian pontiff in more than 4 centuries. Pope John Paul II's papacy was characterized by an extraordinary ability to connect with people of all backgrounds. He traveled extensively, visiting more than 100 countries and reaching millions of people with his message of hope and love. His efforts to bridge divides between faiths, cultures, and nations earned him widespread respect and admiration. He was a tireless advocate for human rights, using his platform to speak out against injustice and oppression wherever he encountered it. Yet, his life was not without challenges. In 1981, Pope John Paul II survived an assassination attempt that left him gravely wounded. Despite the physical and emotional toll, he forgave his would-be assassin, demonstrating the depth of his commitment to the principles of forgiveness and compassion. In the years that followed, he faced numerous health struggles, including Parkinson's disease and several surgeries, but he continued to lead the Church with unwavering dedication. These experiences shaped the Pope's character and deepened his understanding of human suffering. He often spoke about the redemptive power of suffering, urging believers to find meaning in their own trials. This perspective was evident in his final days, as he faced his own mortality with grace and dignity. As we reflect on the life and legacy of Pope John Paul II, it becomes clear that his final message was not an isolated event, but the culmination of a lifetime of faith, wisdom, and love. It was a moment that encapsulated the essence of who he was and what he stood for, a moment that continues to inspire and challenge us to this day. What exactly did he say, and what does it mean for us? These are the questions that drive our exploration of this extraordinary man and his enduring impact on the world. Pope John Paul II's life was marked by extraordinary resilience, a quality that became increasingly evident as he faced some of the most challenging moments of his papacy. From the outset, his tenure as Pope was fraught with trials, but none tested his resolve more than the 1981 assassination attempt that nearly claimed his life. On May 13th of that year, during a public appearance in St. Peter's Square, he was shot 4 times by Mehmet Ali Aka, a Turkish national with murky ties to extremist groups. The bullet struck him in the abdomen, right hand, and left arm, causing life-threatening injuries. The attack shocked the world, plunging millions into prayer and reflection. But what followed was even more extraordinary. From his hospital bed, Pope John Paul II forgave his attacker. He later met with Aka in prison where they spoke privately, an act of mercy that underscored the Pope's deep commitment to the principles of forgiveness and compassion. For John Paul II, this moment was more than a personal gesture. It was a living testament to his faith in action. He believed his survival was no accident, attributing it to the intercession of the Virgin Mary, whose feast day coincided with the date of the shooting. This profound experience seemed to deepen his understanding of suffering and its role in the human journey. In the years that followed, he often spoke about the redemptive power of suffering, urging others to unite their pain with the suffering of Christ. This message resonated deeply with people around the world, especially those facing their own trials. It also became a recurring theme in his papacy, shaping his approach to issues ranging from human rights to social justice. As he aged, Pope John Paul II faced a new set of challenges: the slow but relentless decline of his health. Diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in the early 1990s, he began to experience symptoms that gradually affected his mobility and speech. Despite these limitations, he continued to lead the Church with remarkable determination. His public appearances, though increasingly rare, were marked by a sense of vulnerability that endeared him even more to the faithful. Here was a man who, despite immense physical suffering, remained steadfast in his mission. In addition to Parkinson's, the Pope endured several other health crises, including hip and knee surgeries, a dislocated shoulder, and recurring respiratory issues. Each setback was met with the same quiet resilience that had defined his life. Even as his condition worsened, he refused to let his physical limitations dictate the terms of his leadership. He saw his suffering as an opportunity to draw closer to God and to serve as an example for others. In his final years, Pope John Paul II's struggles became increasingly visible. He often appeared frail, his hands trembling, and his voice barely audible. Yet, these moments of weakness only seemed to amplify his spiritual strength. His very presence was a reminder of the dignity of the human person, even in the face of profound suffering. For many, his perseverance was a source of inspiration, a living example of the courage and faith he had so often preached about. The final days of Pope John Paul II's life were marked by a profound sense of spiritual preparation. As his health deteriorated, he withdrew from public life, spending more time in prayer and reflection. Those close to him described a man who seemed to be at peace with his impending death, fully aware that his earthly journey was drawing to a close. Despite his physical frailty, his mind remained sharp and his faith unshakable. In the weeks leading up to his death, the Pope's condition took a dramatic turn for the worse. He suffered from a severe urinary tract infection that led to septic shock, a life-threatening condition that caused his blood pressure to drop dangerously low. Despite the best efforts of his medical team, it became clear that he would not recover. As news of his declining health spread, millions of people around the world gathered to pray for him, creating a global outpouring of love and support. On April 2, 2005, the world watched as Pope John Paul II took his final breaths. He passed away in his private residence in the Vatican, surrounded by those closest to him. His final moments were marked by a profound sense of peace as he reportedly whispered, "Let me go to the house of the Father." These words, simple yet deeply moving, encapsulated the essence of his faith, a faith that had carried him through a lifetime of trials and triumphs. In the hours and days following his death, the Vatican was inundated with messages of condolence and gratitude from leaders and ordinary people around the world. His funeral, held on April 8th, drew millions of mourners to Rome, including numerous heads of state and religious leaders. It was one of the largest gatherings in history, a testament to the profound impact he had made on the world. Even in death, Pope John Paul II's influence continued to be felt. His final words became a source of reflection and inspiration, inviting people to contemplate their own spiritual journeys. For many, they were a reminder of the ultimate goal of life, to return to the house of the Father, to be united with God in eternity. It was a message that transcended time and place, resonating with people of all faiths and backgrounds. The global reaction to his passing underscored the depth of his legacy. As mourners gathered in churches, plazas, and homes around the world, they were united by a shared sense of loss and gratitude. Pope John Paul II had not only been a spiritual leader, but also a beacon of hope and humanity, a man whose life had touched millions in profound and lasting ways. His final days, like his entire life, were a testament to his unwavering faith, his deep love for humanity, and his abiding trust in the promises of God. Pope John Paul II's legacy is one of profound spiritual, cultural, and historical significance. As one of the most influential popes in modern history, he left behind a rich tapestry of teachings, actions, and messages that continue to resonate with believers and non-believers alike. His contributions to theology, his tireless advocacy for human dignity, and his efforts to unite people across divides of faith and culture all reflect the extraordinary depth of his character and vision. Central to his teachings was the concept of divine mercy, a theme he championed throughout his papacy. Inspired by the writings of Saint Faustina Kowalska, a Polish nun who reported visions of Jesus emphasizing God's infinite mercy, Pope John Paul II dedicated much of his work to spreading this message. He instituted Divine Mercy Sunday, celebrated on the Sunday after Easter, and canonized Saint Faustina in 2000. His devotion to this theme was not just theological, but deeply personal. He saw in divine mercy a path for humanity to reconcile with God and with one another, especially in a world fractured by sin, conflict, and suffering. The Pope's unwavering emphasis on forgiveness and compassion is perhaps best illustrated by his response to the 1981 assassination attempt. After recovering from the attack, he visited his would-be assassin in prison, extending forgiveness and engaging him in a private conversation. This act of mercy transcended political and religious boundaries, embodying the Christian call to love one's enemies. For John Paul II, forgiveness was not merely a moral ideal but a practical necessity for healing a divided world. Another cornerstone of his legacy was his eschatological teachings, his reflections on the ultimate destiny of humanity and the promise of Christ's second coming. Pope John Paul II frequently reminded believers to remain vigilant and faithful, emphasizing that the Christian life is a journey toward eternal union with God. His writings often explored the tension between the temporal and the eternal, encouraging people to live with an awareness of the divine purpose underpinning their lives. His advocacy for human rights and dignity further cemented his legacy as a global moral leader. From his vocal support for the Solidarity movement in Poland, which played a pivotal role in ending communist rule, to his efforts to bridge gaps between nations and faiths, John Paul II was a tireless advocate for justice and peace. He challenged world leaders to uphold the inherent dignity of every person, regardless of race, religion, or economic status, and his messages often called for solidarity with the marginalized and oppressed. Pope John Paul II's legacy also includes his groundbreaking efforts to promote interfaith dialogue. He became the first pope to visit a synagogue and a mosque, setting an example of openness and mutual respect. His outreach to the Jewish community, particularly his acknowledgement of the Church's historical failures during the Holocaust, marked a significant step forward in Catholic-Jewish relations. Similarly, his dialogue with Muslims and members of other Christian denominations reflected his vision of a world where faiths could coexist in harmony. At the heart of his papacy was a profound love for humanity, a love that found expression in his extensive travels, his personal interactions, and his writings. He believed that every person, regardless of their circumstances, bore the image of God and was worthy of love and respect. This belief drove him to reach out to the sick, the poor, and the forgotten, often at great personal cost. His visits to developing countries and his advocacy for social justice highlighted his commitment to building a more equitable and compassionate world. In the wake of his death, Pope John Paul II's teachings and example continued to inspire countless people. His writings, including his encyclicals and letters, remain a rich source of spiritual and moral guidance. His call to holiness, rooted in the universal vocation to love and serve, challenges believers to strive for greater intimacy with God and deeper solidarity with their neighbors. For many, his life serves as a reminder that true greatness lies not in power or prestige, but in humility, faith, and service. As we reflect on his contributions, it is clear that Pope John Paul II's impact extends far beyond the boundaries of the Catholic Church. His life and teachings have left an indelible mark on the global stage, influencing leaders, thinkers, and ordinary people from all walks of life. His canonization in 2014 was a formal acknowledgement of his sanctity, but for millions, his holiness was evident long before his death. He was not just a pope, but a spiritual father, a moral compass, and a beacon of hope in a troubled world. The conclusion of his life, marked by his poignant final words, "Let me go to the house of the Father," continues to resonate as a powerful testament to his faith. These words encapsulate the essence of his journey, a life lived in unwavering trust in God, and a death that was not an end, but a transition to eternal life. For those who followed his teachings, his final message is a reminder of the Christian hope that lies at the heart of his legacy. As his story draws to a close, it invites us to consider our own lives in light of his example. What does it mean to live with faith, courage, and love? How can we, like Pope John Paul II, contribute to a world that reflects the values of compassion, justice, and mercy? These are the questions his life and teachings leave us with, questions that challenge us to grow and to strive for a higher purpose. In the wake of his passing, the world has not forgotten his impact. pilgrims continue to visit the places associated with his life, from his birthplace in Wadowice, Poland, to his tomb in St. Peter's Basilica. His writings are studied, his teachings preached, and his example celebrated. For those who were touched by his life, Pope John Paul II remains not just a figure of history, but a source of inspiration, a reminder of what it means to live a life of faith, hope, and love. As this narrative concludes, it leaves us with a call to action, much like Pope John Paul II himself often did. His story is a testament to the transformative power of faith and the enduring importance of living with integrity and purpose. To honor his memory is to carry forward his message, striving to build a world that reflects the values he so passionately championed. Whether through acts of kindness, commitment to justice, or deepening one's own spiritual journey, each of us has the opportunity to contribute to the legacy of this remarkable man. Let us not let his example fade, but allow it to inspire us to live lives of meaning and grace.